The forest was silent that evening, as if holding its breath. Moonlight filtered through ancient pines, casting long blue shadows across the frost-covered ground. Snow crunched beneath heavy paws as a solitary figure moved between the trees. A wolf, his coat the color of midnight, his eyes amber lanterns in the darkness. He was called Shadow by the humans who feared him, though no name had ever been given to him by his kind. Once part of a proud pack that ruled these mountains, he now walked alone. 3 winters had passed since the hunters had come with their thundersticks and taken his family, one by one, until only he remained. Shadow paused at the edge of a clearing, his breath forming clouds in the cold night air. In the distance, he could hear the faint howls of a new pack that had claimed the northern valleys. Their voices rose in harmony, celebrating a successful hunt, warning away intruders, strengthening their bonds. Shadow lifted his muzzle slightly, an old instinct urging him to answer, to announce his presence, to belong. But he remained silent. The last time he had approached another pack, teeth and claws had greeted him. Territorial markings and snarls had made the message clear. Outsider, intruder, unwelcome. So he continued his solitary path, hunting alone, sleeping alone, surviving alone. The weight of isolation hung heavy on his powerful shoulders, a burden heavier than any winter snow. That night, as the moon climbed higher, Shadow made his den beneath the hollow of a fallen oak. He circled 3 times, as was his ritual, before settling down. Sleep did not come easily. In the darkness behind closed eyes, he still saw them. His brothers racing through summer meadows, his sisters playing in autumn leaves, his parents standing tall and watchful. Memories were poor company, yet they were all he had. The dream came as it often did, running with the pack, belonging whole. When Shadow awoke, the pain of loneliness felt fresher than ever, like a wound reopened. He rose from his den and shook the frost from his fur. Another day of solitude awaited. If you've ever felt the ache of being alone in a world full of others, write the word shadow in the comments to remember that even in darkness, your story continues. Days blended into weeks as winter tightened its grip on the forest. Shadow's ribs began to show beneath his thick coat. Hunting alone was difficult in the deep snow, and game had become scarce. He had not eaten in 3 days when desperation drove him toward the edge of human territory, a place wolves knew to avoid. But hunger makes fools of the wisest creatures. Near the tree line stood a small wooden cabin, smoke curling from its chimney. Shadow's keen nose detected the scent of meat, and his empty stomach growled in response. Cautiously, he crept closer, staying downwind, moving from shadow to shadow. Behind the cabin was a small shed where strips of deer meat hung drying in the cold air. Shadow's mouth watered at the sight. One quick dash, one leap, and he could snatch enough to sustain him for days. He tensed, preparing to sprint forward. That's when he heard it, a soft, pained whimper. Not human, but familiar. Wolf. Shadow hesitated, turning toward the sound. Near the woodpile lay a wolf trap, its cruel metal teeth clamped around the leg of a young gray wolf. The animal's coat was matted, its eyes dull with pain and exhaustion. It had clearly been trapped for days, too weak now to even call for help. Shadow retreated to the safety of the trees, his hunger momentarily forgotten. The trapped wolf was not from his pack, was not his responsibility. Survival in the wild meant looking after oneself first. That was the law of the wilderness, the truth of a lone wolf's existence. And yet, he could not leave. As darkness fell, Shadow watched the cabin. Eventually, the lights went out, and silence settled over the property. Moving silently through the snow, he approached the trapped wolf. The creature bared its teeth weakly, expecting another enemy. Shadow circled the trap, sniffing, examining. He had seen such devices before, had lost pack members to them. The mechanism was beyond his comprehension, but he understood that pulling would only make the teeth bite deeper. For hours, Shadow stayed near the trapped wolf, occasionally bringing snow in his mouth to help quench its thirst. By morning, the young wolf had stopped growling at him, acceptance replacing fear in its eyes. When the cabin door opened and a human emerged, Shadow melted into the forest edge, but did not leave. He watched as the man approached the trap, rifle in hand. Shadow's muscles tensed, ready to charge, despite the futility of attacking an armed human. But instead of using the weapon, the man set it aside. He knelt beside the trapped wolf, speaking in soft tones. With careful movements, he released the spring mechanism, opening the jaws of the trap. The wolf's leg was badly damaged, but not beyond healing. To Shadow's astonishment, the man lifted the injured wolf gently and carried it into the cabin. Through the window, Shadow could see the human cleaning the wound, wrapping it in white cloth. Night after night, Shadow returned, watching through the window as the human tended to the injured wolf. Sometimes, he would find scraps of meat left at the edge of the clearing. Not a trap, but an offering. At first, he would only take the food and retreat quickly. But gradually, he began to linger. One evening, as snow fell in thick, silent flakes, Shadow saw the cabin door open. The man stood there, the healed wolf by his side. With a gentle pat, the human sent the gray wolf forward. It limped slightly, but moved with growing confidence into the forest. Shadow watched from the trees as his unexpected companion approached. There was no aggression between them, only recognition. Two souls who had known isolation, finding an unexpected connection. That night, for the first time since losing his pack, Shadow did not sleep alone. The gray wolf, whom he came to know as Mist, shared his den beneath the fallen oak. Their breath mingled in the cold air as they slept side by side, warmth shared, solitude broken. As winter gave way to spring, Shadow and Mist traveled the forest together. Neither was strong enough alone to claim territory or hunt the larger prey, but together they developed new strategies. Shadow's experience and Mist's agility complemented each other. They were not a true pack, but they were no longer alone. One twilight, as they rested on a high ridge overlooking the valley, an ancient raven landed on a branch nearby. Ravens were known to be wise creatures, observers of all that transpired in the forest. This one had feathers that gleamed with an unusual blue-black iridescence and eyes that held the depth of countless seasons. The raven tilted its head, regarding the two wolves with curious intelligence. "Once shadow, now teacher," the raven croaked, its voice carrying on the evening breeze. Shadow lifted his head, meeting the bird's gaze. Though he could not understand the words, something in the raven's presence commanded attention. The raven spread its wings, casting a shadow that seemed impossibly large for its body. Solitude is not emptiness, it seemed to say through its movements. It is the cocoon where strength grows wings. For 3 days and nights, the raven appeared wherever Shadow and Mist traveled. Sometimes perched silently watching, sometimes flying ahead as if guiding their path. On the third evening, it led them to a hidden valley they had never explored. There, beneath a waterfall that caught the last light of day, the raven demonstrated something remarkable. It separated itself from its flock, sitting alone in meditation-like stillness. Yet, rather than appearing diminished by this separation, it seemed to grow more magnificent, its feathers gleaming with inner light. Then it would return to its kind, bringing back something intangible but precious, as if its time alone had created a gift it could now share. Shadow observed this ritual with growing understanding. The raven was teaching through example what Shadow had learned through painful experience, that there was power in solitude, wisdom to be gained in the quiet spaces between connections. On the fourth day, the raven was gone, but its lessons remained. Summer came to the forest, bringing abundant life. Shadow and Mist had established their small territory near the stream, where fishing was good and deer came to drink. They were neither fully wild nor tame, existing in the boundary space between worlds. Occasionally, the human from the cabin would walk the forest paths, and they would watch from a respectful distance, no longer enemies, not quite friends, but something else, something new. One night, as they slept in their new den among the roots of a great pine, Shadow awakened to a sound that stirred ancient memories. Howls, many voices blending into one, approaching their territory. A pack was coming, the same northern pack that had once rejected him. Shadow stood, hackles rising automatically. Beside him, Mist tensed, still bearing the wariness of one who had been trapped and wounded. The pack emerged from the trees, 10 strong, led by a large silver male. They formed a semicircle, watching, evaluating. Shadow positioned himself protectively in front of Mist, ready for the fight that had always come before. But something had changed in Shadow. The fear that had once driven him to flee or fight too quickly had been transformed during his time alone. The silence of his solitary days had taught him to observe more carefully, to respond rather than react. Instead of growling or charging, Shadow stood tall and still, his amber eyes meeting the gaze of the pack leader without aggression or submission, simply presence. The silver wolf approached cautiously. He sniffed the air, taking in Shadow's scent, Mist's presence, the territory they had created. What he found seemed to surprise him, for in Shadow's steadiness was a strength that had not been there before, a strength forged not in battle, but in the crucible of solitude. Slowly, the silver wolf lowered his head, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. The message was clear. There would be no fight today. Their small territory would be respected. As the pack departed, melting back into the deeper forest, Shadow realized that what they had recognized in him was not weakness or isolation, but a new kind of power. His time alone had not diminished him. It had distilled his essence, concentrated his spirit. That autumn, as crimson leaves carpeted the forest floor, the small 2-wolf pack became 3. A young wolf, separated from its family during a storm, found shelter with them. By winter, 2 more had joined, outcasts and wanderers drawn to the quiet strength that Shadow and Mist offered. Shadow, once the loneliest creature in the forest, had become a leader, not through dominance or aggression, but through the wisdom gained in solitude. He taught the others what the raven had shown him and what his own journey had revealed, that being alone is not the same as being lost, that silence is not emptiness, but fullness waiting to be discovered. On clear nights, when the moon illuminated the snow-covered landscape, Shadow would still sometimes walk alone to the high ridge. There, under the vast canopy of stars, he would remember his time of greatest suffering, not with bitterness, but with gratitude, for it was in that darkness that he had found his true nature, his inner light. And sometimes, in those quiet moments, the raven would appear again, its wings spread against the night sky like a guardian of ancient truths. No words would pass between them, only understanding. The recognition that the deepest wisdom often comes wrapped in the package we least wish to receive. Shadow would then return to the warmth of the den, to the family he had found not by birth, but by choice. Each member carried their own story of isolation, their own scars, visible and invisible. Together, they created something new, a community that honored both connection and solitude, both belonging and independence. The forest whispered their story to all who would listen, how the lone wolf had discovered that solitude is not a punishment, but a passage. How the emptiness that feels like an ending can become the space where new beginnings are born. Remember this, dear friend, when your own path seems darkest and most alone, solitude is not emptiness. It is the place where strength awakens. In the quiet moments when no one else is there, listen carefully. You may hear the voice of your truest self, waiting to guide you home. If this story touched something deep within you, subscribe to Storybox Sage and share it with someone walking their own solitary path. Sometimes the greatest gift we can offer another is the knowledge that even in loneliness, they are not truly alone.